Picture a clean room in Taiwan, white suits, filtered air, a tremor in the earth, 7.0 on the Richter scale. Not a war, not a missile, a geological event. And in that single moment, every hospital on Earth running AI diagnostics goes dark. Every power grid running predictive load management loses its brain. Every bank processing real-time fraud detection freezes. Not because of a cyber attack, because a building in a science park on an island the size of Maryland stopped producing chips. DataVault Studio is known for forensic breakdowns of invisible infrastructure. But the data inside this vault reveals a dependency so catastrophic, so structurally embedded, that the most powerful governments on Earth have no exit plan. This is not a business story. It is a hostage situation, and it begins with one man, selling graphics cards to teenagers who wanted to play video games. Jensen Huang co-founded Nvidia with $30,000 and a business plan sketched on a Denny's napkin. The pitch was simple: build faster graphics chips for the PC gaming market. Teenagers, polygons, frame rates. Nobody in that diner was talking about artificial intelligence. Nobody was talking about data centers. Nobody was talking about national security. Huang was not a visionary in the traditional sense. He was a technical obsessive who believed that the way computers rendered three-dimensional images was fundamentally broken, and that he could fix it. For the first 15 years, that obsession produced better video games. Then something shifted. In 2006, Nvidia released CUDA, a programming framework that allowed developers to use GPU hardware, originally designed for rendering pixels, to perform general-purpose computation at massive scale. Huang did not announce this as a revolution. He released it as a developer tool, a technical footnote. But inside university AI labs, something ignited. Researchers discovered that GPU parallel processing, the same architecture that drew shadows in video games, could train neural networks orders of magnitude faster than anything that existed before. When a neural network trained on Nvidia GPUs won the ImageNet competition by a margin that stunned the field, the trajectory changed permanently. The priest of compute had not predicted the sermon, but he had built the altar. Here is what the quarterly earnings reports do not explain. CUDA is not just a programming language. It is a decade of institutional memory, a generation of engineers trained on its architecture. A library of optimized code, called cuDNN, that every major AI framework depends on. PyTorch, TensorFlow. The entire scaffolding of modern machine learning runs on top of Nvidia's proprietary stack. To leave Nvidia is not a purchasing decision, it is a civilizational migration. Google has tried, AMD has tried, Intel has tried. Each alternative chip requires developers to rewrite years of optimized code. Retrain engineering teams, accept performance regressions during transition, accept the risk that the next breakthrough model, the one that determines whether your company survives the AI decade, runs 40% slower on your new hardware while you debug compatibility issues. No CTO signs that order. No board approves that risk. The trap was not designed. That is the darkest detail in the file. Jensen Huang did not sit in a room and engineer lock-in. He built something genuinely useful. The world adopted it with enthusiasm, and then, one dependency at a time, the exits closed. By the time the world understood what it had signed, the contract was already a decade old. Written not in legal language, written in code that nobody wanted to throw away. There is a moment that defines the monster arc in any founder story. The moment the Messiah looks at what he built and realizes the scale of what he holds. Nvidia crossed a $4 trillion valuation. Briefly, the most valuable company in human history. Not because it sells the most products, because it controls the only product that every other product requires. When the United States government decided to restrict Nvidia chip exports to China, it was not treated as a trade policy. It was treated as a weapon, a chip embargo. the 21st century equivalent of a naval blockade. The Chinese government launched an emergency domestic chip program, billions of dollars. Military urgency, because they understood what American policymakers had already concluded. Whoever controls the GPU controls the trajectory of artificial intelligence, and whoever controls that trajectory controls the century. Jensen Huang began meeting with heads of state, not as a technology vendor, as a geopolitical actor. A private citizen who had, through 30 years of technical obsession, accumulated a form of structural power that no democratic process had conferred and no regulatory framework had anticipated. He still wears the leather jacket, the aesthetic of the engineer. The man who fixed a problem nobody else saw, but the problem he fixed became the foundation everything else was built on. And foundations, once load-bearing, cannot be removed without bringing the structure down. Nvidia does not manufacture its own chips. This is the detail that does not appear in the investor presentations. Every Nvidia GPU, every H100, every Blackwell chip, every piece of silicon that the global AI economy runs on is fabricated at TSMC. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, located on an island that sits 110 miles from mainland China. An island whose political status has been contested for 70 years. Taiwan sits on the boundary of 3 tectonic plates. It records several thousand seismic events per year. A major earthquake in 1999 disrupted global chip supply for months. The industry was smaller then. The dependency was shallower. The entire scaffold of global AI infrastructure, the data centers, the language models, the autonomous systems, the defense networks, traces back to a fabrication process that exists at leading-edge scale in one geography. The United States government has classified this as a strategic vulnerability. The European Union has committed billions to build alternative fabrication capacity. It will take a decade, minimum, to produce chips at comparable density. A decade during which the dependency deepens with every model trained, every data center built, every enterprise that embeds Nvidia architecture into its core operations. The island has not been invaded, the earthquake has not happened. But the scenario planning exists, in military command centers, in central bank stress tests, in the emergency protocols of hospital networks that run AI triage systems. All of them contain a version of the same question: what happens if the chip stops? None of them contain a satisfying answer. Here is the forensic conclusion. Jensen Huang did not set out to hold the world hostage. He set out to fix the way computers draw triangles. The hostage situation is the emergent property of 30 years of compounding technical advantage, deliberate ecosystem design, and a world that chose convenience over resilience at every decision point. The CUDA trap is not a conspiracy. It is what happens when one tool becomes so embedded in the infrastructure of an industry that removing it costs more than any single organization is willing to pay. Multiplied across every major AI lab, every cloud provider, every government defense contractor simultaneously. The man in the leather jacket did not build a monopoly. He built a religion, and the world converted, willingly, enthusiastically, one GPU at a time, until the conversion was complete and the cathedral was load-bearing. The question is not whether Nvidia deserves its position. The question is what it means that a single company, built by one man, running on one island, dependent on one fabrication process, has become the central nervous system of the global economy. We have outsourced our collective intelligence to a sliver of silicon. The throne is occupied, the lease belongs to one man, and the rest of the world is paying rent. Subscribe to DataVault Studios for more forensic breakdowns of the invisible infrastructure running the modern world. Because the real story of Nvidia isn't a chip company winning a technology race. It's one man's 30-year technical obsession becoming the ransom note the entire planet is now reading. Enter the vault.